Okay, so we're back. I just wanted to provide some more clarification. I got some great questions after the first part, so I wanted to address a couple things that may have been left out. So, back on the training startup checklist, wanted to show you a few things after I go through these slides. All right. So, a few clarification points in logistics. So the study startup checklist is created by the regulatory coordinator. So you will not be copying that training checklist. Again, you should not be using the training startup checklist for anything. You will not be creating any of the startup checklists. They will be made for you and they'll be in the main study folder once they're created by the regulatory contact. So once the regulatory coordinator creates your source docs and your main study folder, they'll also create your startup checklist by copying the actual template. And they'll put that in the main study folder. So you will receive an email notification to the site manager and study lead, and that will let you know that the folders are created, the startup checklist is created, and that we can go ahead and start working on that screening script so that we can start calling patients and putting them on our calendar. So this email is actually what initiates the whole study startup process at the site. So really nothing's going to be happening until you get an email saying, hey, your study's approved. We have a start date. Go ahead and start working on the script. Here are all your folders and your checklist. So as far as due dates and updating the completed items, so the notes section is actually where you're going to list who's been assigned each specific task and when it's due. So the assigned person can turn the task green to alert the study lead that it's completed. So it's not required that if you're assigned the task, you complete it green, because ultimately that's still going to fall on the study lead because they should make sure all these things are getting done. The real place where anybody who's assigned a task is going to track that is going to be on their action items. So assigned tasks and due dates must be added to the action items, just like any normal task that you get assigned at work. So if you're supposed to make visit one source document, your name will be on the startup checklist for the visit one document, but it'll ultimately be on your action items as well. And the study lead will add them to your action items and put the due date, which was agreed upon between the site manager and the study lead. And the study lead will also ensure that any documents created are turned in to the site's lead coordinator, the LC. So once you create the document that the study leads asked you to, you would give that created document in its entirety to the lead coordinator because they are responsible for revising them. So they'll look at them, give you some feedback, make sure it's updated. They might give you some tips and have you turn it back in after you make the updates. And then the lead coordinator will turn in the final draft to the manager for final approval and review. So that way, by the time it gets to the site manager, the source document or checklist or whatever you're creating should be pretty much good to go. And then if the site manager has any comments, likely it's going to be, minor points and tweaks to make. All right. So again, with the whole startup process, I was asked about timelines and when do we know when to start. If you look at the upcoming study tracker and a study is awarded, does that mean you're automatically starting the startup checklist? That's not the case. So although a study may be awarded already, we do not always have an estimated start date from the sponsor right away. So for example, we had a study for which we were approved in fall, winter 2017, and we didn't start screening until spring, summer 2018. So until the sponsor gives us an actual hard start date or an estimation at least, we're not going to start hitting the ground running because you'll put in all the work and it may not work out in the end, or the study is just not going to take off. So we wait until that sweet spot where we know the study's happening, we know it's starting, and we have a rough estimate of when we'll start seeing patients. So that's when we'll start on the checklist. So again, no action may be taken on the study until we have a better idea of when to actually start seeing patients. And the site manager is going to keep the study lead updated. So that's where you'll get all your updates. If you're curious and you see that we're awarded the study and you see your name as the lead, just make sure you check in periodically. But ultimately, if any action is to be taken, you will be notified. There's no question about that. Also, we may receive notification of a start date on short notice. So, just like research, not everything or anything really is ideal. So, it would be nice to have months ahead of time to know to prepare, but sometimes it's a matter of maybe 2 weeks, and then we're expected to start screening shortly after. So, you can't really predict when you'll be starting, but as soon as we get that communication from the study team that this is the date we're starting, it could go very quickly after that. So it does take a lot of coordination and efficiency to pull off the startup process in only a few days or maybe a week or two, but it can be done and we have done it every time. So do not be intimidated by that timeline. Panic is fair. You can go ahead and have your moment, but as a site, we all have to pull together and make sure that we meet our requirements and that we do not delay the study starting or our first patient first visit on our account. So we should never be delayed because we didn't do the source docs on time. Never be delayed because we forgot to order some important supply that we need. We just need to be diligent on the first pass, and it's going to be, difficult and challenging, but in the end, the work will pay off. And then finally, updates regarding study awards and timelines will be communicated by the site manager to the coordinators. I was asked, how do we know? And we know that not all the information gets disseminated all the way down to the study coordinators. It's just that, some things are just not necessary at the time, or we might have more information, but we have no idea when to start. So we just don't want to have you stress out and look too much into a study or start reading protocols for studies that may not start for another few months. So that's the reason why you don't know everything in real time, but the managers will make sure to let you know as soon as, there's any significant movement on a study. All right, so finally, to demonstrate all these clarifications I communicated to you, we'll go back to our training document. So here's where we left off last time. So we're going to scroll down. We can do maybe the source document section. Sorry, thanks for being patient with my loading computer. All right, so here we are in source docs. So this is where, like I mentioned, you would put all the initials and dates. The names and due dates for the people that have been assigned this test. So let's say the person doing demographics is also going to do physical exam, adverse events, and comments. So we can put Chinonso, and then do, 01 July 2018. And then if they all have the same due date, you can go ahead and just carry that over, copy, paste it. And if they're different, you can just change them. So this is a good way to just flag that person that it's assigned to them. And you would turn it red so that it can pop out so someone knows there's action needed there. Any other notes you make in this section really doesn't need to be read unless it's an action item. And then you can go ahead and copy that to their action items. So you wouldn't actually copy the contents of this note column. You would just go to their action items and add complete demographics for protocol DR 2018-001. And then in the due date column on action items, you just put the due date as it stands on the startup checklist. And remember, due dates are assigned by the site manager in discussion with the study lead. All right, if you don't have any other questions, that will be it for this session.